How's it going, everybody? In this video, we're going to go ahead and deploy the MSAD server right here. We're going to go ahead and deploy server 2012 R2 inside of VMware WorkStation 16. We're going to go ahead and give it the IP address of 10.255.1.21 once it's all booted up. And we're going to, after we get the server deployed, which is only going to take us a couple minutes in the initial part of the video, then we're going to go through and change its host name, change it to a domain controller, add DNS. We have a bunch of DNS entries that we have to create and things like that. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the deployment of Windows Server 2012 R2. Go ahead and pull up our server. I'm going to go ahead and create a new virtual machine. So you can either have the the operating system's local, which is what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to pause this video. I'm going to copy the Windows Server 2012 R2 and the Windows 10 Enterprise Evaluation version of Windows 10 here to Documents folder so I can easily map it to VMware Workstation when we're doing this. So I'm going to go quick pause and move those files over. Alright, with the operating systems copied over, I'm going to go to create a virtual machine, click next, and I'm going to go to browse, and I'm going to go to this PC, documents, grab 2012 R2, click open. It's detecting the right OS, click next. I'm going to go underneath here, underneath my, come down here just a little bit. I have this external hard drive volume D. I'm going to go ahead and expand that. Underneath VMware, I'm going to go ahead and say make new folder because there isn't one already there. If we come over here to this PC, underneath volume D, VMware, we don't have anything sitting there. So I'm going to go ahead and say, we go ahead and make new folder underneath this guy. And I'll call this something articulate, like for example admin VMs, or actually let's put a WS for workstation VMs. Click on that, click OK, and then underneath here I'm going to go ahead and browse. I'm going to add another one underneath here, make new folder, and this one's going to be called ms-ad. Click on OK, and I'm going to put this ms-ad, so that's what it's going to be. Because if you were to just put the to install the VM inside of workstation VMs, you would literally just populate this entire folder with a single VM's hard drive and all other type of stuff. By putting it in here, at least here it's got a better chance of getting utilized the way that it needs to be. So I'm actually going to go ahead and pull this guy over. And I'd love to let me just do this. I want you guys to see the files get populated and stuff like that. It's actually kind of cool to watch. So go ahead and move that over a little bit. Alright, so underneath here I'm going to click on next. And the hard drive space, 60 gigs is fine. Click on next. I'm going to customize the hardware. This guy, his adapter, he's only going to need one adapter, but it's going to be bridged because he's going to have the IP address of 10.255.1.21. Memory, we're going to go ahead and give him 8 gigs of RAM, and we're going to go ahead and give it 2 procs. And I'm going to turn on Intel VT. And then the CD DVD drive is already mapped to the appropriate ISO file, which is what we need. I'm going to go ahead and click on close, and then finish. That's going to also power the virtual machine on. As you can see over here on the right hand side, a bunch of files are being created and the VM is being deployed. So it's kind of cool to watch the how workstation and the VM is created on the fly. So it's going to go ahead and load the files. This will take just a couple of minutes, and I'll get you guys through the first couple minutes of the deployment. Just the clickety-click stuff, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and click on next, install now, give that a couple seconds to do its thing. I'll go ahead and scoot this over just a little bit, and we're going to see that there's a bunch of files that are created underneath here, and as you can see, if you look underneath these guys, there's several hard drive. This is the virtual disk, in case you were wondering. And then as these fill up, as we start to fill them up with space and write to the disk and things like that, these files will actually get larger. So I'm going to go ahead and click on next with a standard evaluation with a GUI. Make sure you click on that. I'm a GUI guy. I need a GUI to work with. Accept license terms. Click next. Install Windows only. Choose a 60 gig hard drive. Click next. And then that will begin its install process. Now, if we were to come back over here and just start refreshing, you'll start to see it might take a little bit for it to update, but you'll see that as the copying of the files gets done, you'll start to see these file folders increase in size. Alright, so the install has completed successfully. I'm going to go ahead and give this guy a password, capital P @SSW0RD, and repeat that one more time, capital P @SSW0RD. Click on finish, and there we go. For some reason, I'm not sure exactly why, but when I refresh it, these numbers aren't updating, and which is a little unusual, but it is what it is. Not going to worry about that too much right now. So the server is up and running. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go right click here on the tab and then say send control delete, and then in here we're going to enter the password, go ahead and log in, and then we're going to go ahead and do the next process, which is going to be set the IP address up, get it so it has internet access, and all that good stuff that goes along with it. So I'm going to right click here, open network and sharing center, click on Ethernet 0, properties, IPv4, properties, use the following IP address, and we'll say 10.255.1.21/24 mask, 10.255.1.1 as my gateway, and then quad 8 as a DNS server, and close all that out. And there we go. Yeah, sure, we'll go ahead and allow it to be discoverable. Not that it really makes much of a difference. We're going to go ahead and minimize that. We'll minimize this, and soon we will have Windows license is good to go. I'm also going to go over here and say right click, and then I'm going to say install VMware Tools. I'm going to go ahead and click on the file folder, click on this, and then double click right here to get VMware Tools installed. We're going to need that in order to interact with the server the way we need it to. So we'll get that part started and all the good stuff that goes along with that. Alright, so we're going to click on the flashing yellow sign, click next, next, and then install to do the deployment of VMware Tools. And I'll go into more details later on when we get into virtual machines and how all that type of stuff comes together, instead of wasting time talking about it here, which we're just trying to get through an install. Alright, so now that the VMware Tools has been installed, we're going to have to go ahead and restart the server, which we're going to go ahead and do real quick. That'll take just a couple of moments to do. I'll pause until it's restarted and we're good to go. Alright, so our server is now rebooted and we have VMware Tools installed, so I'm going to go ahead and send control delete. And if you don't notice this, I'm going to point it out. The experience has greatly increased. So we're good to go there. I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out just a little bit so we have a little more real estate to work with. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is begin the process of doing the domain controller installation. And I'll show you guys how that works here in just a second. I'm going to wait for Server Manager to load up here so we have the ability to interact with it. I'm going to go full screen with Server Manager. It's a little slow, but we'll be able to deal with it. Alright, so in order to do this, we're going to go over here to the local server, and I'm going to make a couple of adjustments here so we know what's going on. So what we're going to go do is, for remote desktop, I'm going to go ahead and allow remote connections to this computer. Click OK. Select, and I'm going to uncheck that box so we can have anybody come in and do it. I'm going to click on apply and OK. And then I'm going to go over here to the time zone. I'm actually in the central time zone. Cancel on that one. Change time zone to be central time. Click OK. So then it's going to bump me down to 12:30, which it is not. I'm going to change the date and time to be here. Be 10, and then it's PM. There we go. Click OK. All right. Then on the enhanced IE security, which is basically Internet Explorer Enhanced Security Config, I'm going to turn it off for administrators. We don't need that. And then on the activated, okay, so we're going to click cancel on that. We'll go ahead and refresh. And as you can see down here, we've been activated. So that should flip over from not activated to activated. But you can see down here, or I'm sorry, in this one right here, we're still saying not activated. Not sure why it's saying that, but it is. All right, so the one that we need to worry about right here is in the upper left-hand corner. We need to come in here to, I'm going to go ahead, computer name. I'm going to change this to be ms-ad. So we know what it is. And I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. That's going to change the name. So from moving on, I'll have to, if I want to RDP into this box from another VM that's inside of the domain, I'll be able to plug in ms-ad. I'm going to go ahead and rename it that. Click close, restart now. So I'll give that a couple seconds to restart and we'll be good to go. Then we'll go ahead and kick off the install of the domain controller bits and get the domain to promote the server to be a domain controller. Alright, it took about 30 seconds for the reboot to happen. I'm going to go ahead and send control, delete the login to this guy again. And then we're going to go over here to the server manager, and now we're going to go through the install of the domain controller bits. So in order to do that, we're going to come to the Manage tab. We're going to go ahead and add roles and features. Click on Next, role-based, and then we're going to go ahead and see how the server has now been changed to ms-ad. Click Next, and what do we want to install? We're going to go ahead and install the Domain Services feature, and click on Next, and then Install. So this will take a couple minutes to install. Once we've installed it, then we'll be able to promote the server to be a domain controller and give it a domain name and all that other good stuff to make a domain controller be operational. So we'll pause until that process is done. So the domain controller is now installed, as you can see. Configuration required, installation succeeded. So now we click on this guy right here. It says do this, or if you were to say close it out, let's say you oopsied. You close it out. Oh, what do I do? Click on the little triangle thing up here, and then you can say promote from here. Either way will work. So give this a couple seconds. We don't already have a existing domain controller or an existing forest, so we're going to go ahead and create a new forest. The root domain name is going to be lab.local because I happen to just like that domain. You can use whatever you want in here, whether it's a lab environment or a production environment. If it's a prod environment, obviously you're going to use your domain. But if it's a lab.local is great. You can use lab.com, test.lab, test.local, whatever. The next thing we're going to have to go through and do is configure the directory services restore mode password. So in the event that there's a problem, you can restore the directory. I oopsed on the password. There we go. The functional level and domain forest and domain functional level will be server 2012 R2. If there was 2008, I believe is the other option, you'd be able to go down as far as that. So, which means that if you have 2016 or something newer, you would just dumb down the 2016 services to whatever 2012 supports. And that's pretty, we're going to next through these last few ones. It's basically just squawking about domain names and DNS and things like that. The NetBIOS domain name will be lab in all caps right here. Click next. Choose our paths to save things. I'm not going to mess with any of these values. I'm just going to go through and next all the way through. As long as the prerequisites check, we'll be in good shape to go ahead and install the domain controller and get that process done. So everything looks good. We're going to go ahead and click on install to do the domain controller update. There it goes. So we'll wait a few minutes. This will take probably about 5 minutes or so to install. It normally does. Sometimes it goes a little bit quicker depending on the platform. But once it's done, it'll basically say, hey, we have to reboot. It'll go through the reboot. It'll come back in and we'll be able to log in as a domain controller. And then we're going to have to work on some of our DNS structure and stuff like that. We're going to do DNS structure out of the gate because when we get down the road to doing the vCenter server deployment and any of the ESXi hosts that we want to play around with, we're going to want to leverage a domain name using DNS. So like host1.lab.local and things like that. So it'll give us the ability of playing around with the technology in a more real world fashion versus using IP addresses and things like that. So we get the alert that we're going to be logged out. I'm just going to close out a couple of these. It's automatically going to reboot us, so we don't have to worry about that. It'll reboot. It's going to load up directory services and a bunch of other stuff in the back end. And we're going to go ahead and just wait for it to finish doing its pop-up stuff. Once it's done, we'll be able to log in, and we'll log in as a domain admin. And then we'll go ahead and play around with the DNS entries. Alright, so the server has rebooted. I'm going to right click here, send Control-Delete, and bam, look at that. Lab/administrator. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And there we go. So the next thing for us to go do is, I really wish the license would say not expired. But it is what it is. I may have to power it off and power it back on. Alright, so what we're going to go do now is a couple little things that, of note for any of you that are not familiar with how domain controllers work and DNS and all that other fun stuff that goes along with them. Is when you create a domain controller, we're going to look at the details here. You can see that we've got the IP address that we created earlier, but you notice there's no DNS server. That's because it points to itself. So we come over here to IPv4, we can see that it's 127.0.0.1. So, but we notice we have internet access, right? So let's go ahead and minimize some of these other ones. We have internet access, right? I'm going to go ahead and type in CMD, and I'm going to pin this to the taskbar just so we have ping access, and we're going to ping google.com. And so we should be able to ping google.com, which we are. So there we have it. So the next thing for me to go do now is to go over to Server Manager, go down to Tools, and then DNS, and we're going to create a couple of entries. I'm going to expand this guy, and in Conditional Forwarders, I'm going to right click here and say New Conditional Forwarder. In here, I'm going to go ahead and type in Quad 8, click on that, and it's able to find it. We're going to put in here Google. So we now know what will end up happening is we'll configure all of our devices in the network to point to our domain DNS server, so the domain controller 10.255.1.21 as our DNS server, and then from there the DNS server will inherit any of the, will receive, or intercept I should say, will intercept any of those DNS requests, and then they'll send them off to the internet. So that's how you create a conditional forwarder. The forward lookup zones, we're going to come down and expand lab.local. As you can see, we don't have a whole lot going on here. I'm going to go ahead and right click here and add a host. I'm going to call this vert-host1.lab.local. We 10.255.1.22. Add host, and then vert-host2.lab.local 10.255.1.23. and then virt for virtual host 3.lab.local, and then 10.255.1.24, and click on add host. And then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to bring this guy back up. We have FreeNAS. FreeNAS is going to be .25, which is going to be one of our servers that we're going to connect to, which is going to provide our shared storage. So I'm going to go ahead and connect back over to this guy. I'll put in here san-vm. We'll type in 10.255.1.25, add host, and then we're going to go ahead and type in vcsa1.lab.local, 10.255.1.26, and then we're going to go, and at this point in time we're pretty much good to go with all these other ones that we have. If we wanted to add in VCSA2 or any of the other options, we could, but for right now that's everything we need. So it gives us our 3 hosts, storage area network, the vCenter server, so on and so forth. So that is everything we need to have up and running for all of our configuration and things like that as we're moving forward. If we need to go out to the internet, we can click on Internet Explorer. We're going to go ahead and use recommended security and capability settings, and I'm going to come over here and go to google.com. So we're going to do that, and I'm also going to I'll grab Firefox real quick and download and install Firefox so that we have it. And the reason why we're going to do that is because I'll be using Firefox for all of our demos and things like that as we move forward. Download Firefox real quick. That'll take a couple seconds for it to initiate. We're going to go ahead and just run the installer from here. And I'm going to, from here, I'm going to ping Microsoft.com. So for some reason, Microsoft is not responding, which I think is why the Windows license is saying expired. So if you're not sure on how that would work, go to Google. And then on Google, Microsoft, it's running a little slow. That's because it's installing Firefox. Microsoft activation servers. And I don't see any reason why the servers would be down, but you never know. So there's ways of fixing this. You can force it with some different options that are out there, but I wonder what the IP addresses are. So you can click on this one. I don't know how old this page is, but you can come in here and I don't know if that's a legitimate IP address. We can give it a shot though. We can plug in here, hit the up arrow, try to ping it again. They might just have ICMP turned off. So we're going to go ahead and ping 131.253.61.96. That might not respond. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to work. That's alright though. So in the event that this doesn't work, that's okay. I will play around with the option. There's some options that you can do trigger this through, which I believe they call, let me go ahead and close off Internet Explorer. Close all tabs. In Firefox, if you were to come in here and go to google.com, and then you were to plug in here SLM manager, and we're going to say activate. We're going to say activate server 2012 R2, for example. You can there's a what do they call that? There is a VBS, which is Visual Basics, and you can run some of these commands in order to try to upgrade it or activate. So what I'll do here is, because actually it's kind of bothering me, if you couldn't tell. So if you come back over here, there is the option of doing the SLM, MGR, and then rearm. So you would go to, I believe it's the command line. Yeah, you run it as a command prompt. So we're going to right click here, command prompt admin, and then we're going to go ahead and the command is let's see. I don't have an actual. I think it's the we have a rearm option. Yeah, so we'll just grab this. We could also try doing the ATO, the activate Windows Online. So we'll go ahead and do this one. We'll paste it in here and paste. Command. Okay. So, and there's also the option to do the ATO. Even though it says we non-core edition. Okay. So now that we have all this stuff laid out for us, close all tabs. We should be able to restart the computer. We'll see if that fixes the problem. If it doesn't, I will find an alternative way to fix this. But I will try to reinstall, because obviously this install without a problem. I will attempt to reinstall. Matter of fact, let's come down to here, and we're going to go command prompt admin. We'll ping microsoft.com. This might be a bigger issue somewhere else, but as you can see, it's not even working from the main server. That's okay though. This isn't a showstopper for me. This is more of an inconvenience, but I can always reinstall this offline, but I wanted to walk you through the process of going through the steps. Until next time, guys, thanks so much for stopping by, and I'll catch all of you in the following video. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you guys next time.